It's that word we're all sick of hearing, lockdown.
You must stay at home.
No socialising, no adventures, and fishing under multiple restrictions. But rather than moan about it, we're bringing you this series to keep you going through these troublesome times. I'm Alan Blair, and these are the Lockdown Lives. When the first lockdown hit, I undertook daily Instagram live streams, but once they were done, 24 hours later, they were gone forever. I was inundated with messages from people who had missed them, they had questions to ask, and they wanted to hear them again. So whether you've got questions about bait, want to hear me rant about what's right or wrong with fishing, FAQs, fishing in the upper layers, and plenty more, I hope this series will help answer some of your questions and potentially give you a little fishing fix during the most frustrating of times. These are the Lockdown Lives.
Hello again, everyone. Yeah, hope you're really good, hope you're safe, hope you're well. And most importantly, I hope you've managed to get out fishing since this last episode. If you did, I hope you caught, and I hope that caption meant something to you personally, and in your eyes counted. Today, I mentioned this last time, we're going to get right into the nitty-gritty of location watercraft, which is, without doubt, in my opinion anyway, the most important aspect of carp fishing. What is watercraft? What is location? It is the understanding of the environment that you're fishing in, being able to look for signs and signals from the carp and that environment, act on those, build up pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, so to speak, to give you as much knowledge as you can about those fish that you're fishing for and their environment. It, unlike a lot of things in life, can't simply be learnt in the click of a fingers. For example, like a chod rig could, or how to tie a solid PVA bag. Getting good at watercraft and reading the water, it takes years. A lifetime, in fact, you know. I've been fishing for more than 30 years, and it doesn't make me an expert at it. Far from it, in fact. Every time you go to a different venue, and even across the seasons and stuff, the carp's behaviour, the habits will change, and you've got to constantly adapt, and most importantly, constantly be looking and learning and understanding all the time. A lot of it boils down to, in my opinion, the desire to hunt and search. You know, when you think of fishing, you don't think of it like hunting, but I do. I think I'm out there, I'm in pursuit, I'm hunting, I'm looking, I'm searching. And that is something that is inside me anyway. It's brought out of me through angling, but I think we all have that to a degree, that hunting instinct. And it goes back to quite possibly that caveman era, you know, where we had to fend for ourselves against those dinosaurs. We had to go out there and find our food, go and find a woolly mammoth, for example, and bring it home to the family. Fishing is somewhat different, you know, certainly in carp fishing. We're not killing our fish and taking them home to eat them, but we're out there hunting, we are definitely in pursuit. And I shouldn't just say cavemen for that matter, because there's plenty of ladies and girls that are out there carp fishing too. None so more than my own children. Maya especially, she's 6 now, she loves nothing more than taking a box to retainer captures in and a butterfly net and going out there and hunting in pursuit of something. She can do it for hours and hours and hours, and she takes a lot from it. She really enjoys that. Like I say, it's something that's inside us. It's just really brought out of us as carp anglers because it's so important to be able to find those fish. At the end of the day, guys, this is going to sound so blatantly obvious, but I can't put it any more simple. Every time you go fishing, every time I go fishing, if I pick a spot, pick a location, and I cast out, and there's no carp in front of me, guess what? You can't catch them. Yes, potentially you could bait and wait, you could apply some bait and hope those fish are going to come through that area. Sometimes they do, sometimes that works, but fundamentally, all anglers will want there to be fish present in front of them when they start fishing. Never ever forget that. I'm going to tell you a little story now that I love this story. It makes me often think about my own fishing and the decisions and choices I make, and it relates to watercraft and stuff. Many years ago, I fished a UK carp match. It was a singles event at a venue I knew, Chestnut Pool in Bedfordshire. It's a small venue, 2 islands, around 4 acres in size, and I don't know, stab in the dark. 2,000 carp, maybe more, loads of fish in this venue. There's about 15 of us fishing it. I came out quite low in the draw, drew my peg, went in and started. Carnage, setting all the rods up, getting prepared, ready for the whistle to blow and start fishing that competition. And I did. I stayed up all night. I tried everything. Fished a pole even, zigs, up against the island, little flatbed feeders, pellet waggler, you name it, I tried it to try and get off the mark and catch some fish. All around me, lads were catching. Come morning time, I've had no sleep and I've had no carp. And I'm somewhat despondent. And I think to myself, how could I best use the rest of this weekend? And I decided the best thing to do is probably knock it on the head. Not great matchman tactic this, but to make up for that, bitterness, or I'd go around and I'd speak to everyone. So I wandered around the whole lake, spoke to all the other competitors. It took me about 2-3 hours, something like that. And I got back and I just started to pack my gear away. Halfway through that process, my very good friend Reedy turned up with his lovely girlfriend Katie, saw me breaking everything down and said, "Al, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm done. I've fished all night, I've not been to sleep, not had a single bite, tried absolutely everything, bait, rigs, you name it, I've been through the lot, can't catch them." And Reedy said to me, "Bro, that's not you. Get back on there now and you start fishing. Get a rod out, come on." I was like, "No, Reedy, it ain't gonna happen." Anyway, he convinced me, persuaded me to. I went back out with the pellet waggler, put a few pellets over the top, and literally had a bite straight away. And another one, and another one, and another one. I ended up staying up the following night all night, and I caught a lot of fish, over 500 pound of carp in that last sort of 24-hour period. It put me in third place, I think, at the end of the match. And the reason I'm telling you that story is because the first part of that match, that first night, first 12, 14, 16 hours, it wasn't that I'd selected a wrong rig or a wrong bait. The fish just weren't in front of me, I was blaming it on everything else, not that fact, I'd had a walk round, maybe it's because I took lines out of the water, maybe other anglers had made more disturbance, but whatever happened in that 3-hour period of walking round, fish ended up in my body of water. And I went back in with exactly the same tactics and caught from the off. So it's a valuable lesson to me that even in a venue, small in size, stuffed full of carp, if they're not in front of you, you can't catch them. And that's what I want you to be really, really conscious of and try and remember. Every time you go, do everything in your power to ensure they're in front of you. How do you find them? I think the number one most important thing I've got to talk to you about, and I'm sure most of you are already aware and have got some, that is polarized sunglasses. At the end of the day, I want to try and find physical carp. And these here are a massive asset. They basically take the glare off the water and they allow me to see things that I couldn't see if I didn't have them on. Pretty magical, when I explain them to my little girls, they're like, "Wow, Dad, that's magic." And it is, you can literally put these on, takes the glare off the water and I can see more features, more carp, and just get a better understanding of what's going on down there. It still stuns me to this day that I bump into anglers that haven't got a pair, but they've got £200 worth of expensive stainless or expensive bite lamps, but they don't have a simple pair of polarized sunglasses. You can get them in various different price brackets. I've got some here that I use, Costas. I've used Fortis over the years. These Costa ones probably cost about £200, so they're very, very expensive. These Nash wraps here, they cost £20. I can say hand on heart, I struggle to notice any difference whatsoever when wearing them. It's just really important that you've got a pair. They come in different lens colours. Amber's really, really good for low light levels. There's also greens or darker shades that are good for bright sunshine. But if you haven't got a pair of these guys, get out there as soon as possible and grab yourself some polarised sunglasses. What am I looking for when I've got them on? I'm looking for carp, like I say, and to help aid spotting those fish a little bit easier, I'm looking for vantage points. Can I climb up a tree to give me a better view over a body of water? Can I get onto railings? Can I get onto anything just to be able to look down that little bit further? I often wonder, because I'm so lanky and tall, whether that gives me an advantage against someone who's shorter. I'm about 6'3". If you're only a youngster and you're 4 foot, I do feel I've got an advantage, just that extra foot or two, being able to see into the water and stuff. It helps me spot things that I need to see to give me knowledge and understanding of the water I'm fishing. Once upon a time I fished the wharf in Cardiff. That was really, really cool. There was a big block of flats at one end. This is sort of pre-drones. And one of the lads who lived right at the top of the block of flats, he was an angler, come down to see us and said, would you like, swap mobile numbers? I'll go up into my flat again and I'll have a little look for you. And it was amazing. He went up there, we were on the phone, he's going, yeah, they're in this corner and this. Just that additional vantage point, it allows you to see so much more. And talking of drones, they are the big thing at the moment. Utilising a drone in carp fishing has really changed the game and is the future. You can flip one up in a matter of seconds, fly it across the lake, and immediately you can see not only the carp, but the environment that they're living in. Real massive edge, like it or not. How else can I spot them? If they're at close range, yeah, with my glasses I can see things, but if they're anything further out than that, I'm going to need to use, for example, a pair of binoculars or possibly a monocular. This is good for seeing things that we'll cover in a minute, but maybe bubbles, dark shapes, displacement of water, anything beyond sort of 20 or 30 yards. If I don't use something like this, I'm not going to be able to see those vital signals and signs that I need to. Another option, we all go on about, not we all, a number of people will be quite negative to the fact that drones are now available and people are using them in their carp fishing. But going back pre-drones, don't forget Google Maps. It's interesting why there's so much negativity to drones. I don't ever remember there being negativity towards Google Maps, but we've all got access to the internet in this day and age. You can go on there, you can look at the venue you're fishing, and more often than not, you can immediately see some pretty striking features in the forms of maybe bars or weed beds or plateaus, deep areas, shallow areas. All of this is giving you pieces of information to help you sort of discover where those carp might be or might like spending some of their time. I think when you're going through this process of looking at a venue, exploring a venue, hunting fish down, it's really important you try and leave no stone unturned. I mean search everywhere, in through the deep bushes, literally check every nook and cranny. I remember out in Paris with Ollie when we were filming one of the Eurobanks episodes. We'd lapped this big park lake in Paris, seen nothing. Ollie went back to the motor. I said, I'm going to go for one more look. And I ended up crawling so deep in through the undergrowth to get to bits of water that I couldn't see. And yeah, I found them. It was just a case of having to check everywhere. And, the carp did present themselves to us. It's probably even more noticeable in the winter. You might think in the winter time, for example, nah, it's not worth looking in the shallows, but it could well be that's where they are. We might have had a warm day of sunshine and it's enough to get those fish moving. They've gone into that shallow water. They want the warmth on their back. Can't stress it enough, guys. When you're going on your missions, when you're trying to understand where those carp are, don't leave any stone unturned. I often use this analogy whenever I'm looking at any body of water, especially on bigger venues or long bits of canal and river. The quicker I can work out where they want to be, the quicker I can not waste time looking in other areas. So using a house as an example, you've got maybe 2, 3, 4 bedrooms in your house, hallways, garages, kitchens, dining rooms, a garden. There's going to be areas in your house where you live that you spend a phenomenal amount of time chilling, watching TV, sleeping in the bedroom. There's also going to be areas that you spend very little time, and I always try and go into exploring a venue looking for carp with that sort of concept in my head. I want to quickly ascertain where those fish want to spend great amounts of time, and I want to eradicate the areas that they don't use at all. There's no point wasting time sort of looking across the water or checking in the bushes there if it's an area that they very rarely or don't use whatsoever. Happy places, that's what it boils down to. The carp in the venue that you are fishing, they will have happy places. Those happy places could be for a number of reasons. It might be that there's food there, it might be that there's shelter there, it might be that there's a lack of angling pressure there, it might be that they go there to have sex, but those carp will have areas, depending on the time of the year, maybe depending on the time of the day, where they will like to spend great amounts of time, and the sooner you can work out those happy places, the better. A couple more examples. One would be the River Chelmer. Did a little bit of time on it, good few years ago now, 5 or 6 years ago. And I was guilty, and have been in years gone by as well, of walking stretches of river and going, yeah, that looks amazing, that big tree in the water, or a load of lily pads, for example. And I'd often start fishing and baiting those areas. What I learnt in more recent times, specifically this sort of campaign I did on the Chelmer, was the carp will spend time where they want to spend time. And I quickly, after a number of walks, managed to work out where those fish wanted to be. It was no good walking along the river and seeing the odd carp, you know, swimming, for example. I wanted to find carp that were chilling, feeding, resting. They were consolidated into an area. And the particular area I found looked pretty bland in comparison to some of the other bits of the stretch. You know, there was other bits on the stretch with massive overhangs and trees in the water, big sandy, shallow gravel areas and stuff. And to the angler, they looked far better than where I ended up fishing. But I ended up fishing where the fish wanted to be. It was deeper there was dense weed down in the river itself, and those fish were just happy there. And I have no doubt there was a lot more natural food there than other bits of the stretch. And I went on to catch some really nice fish. And much more recently, just before Christmas, I went out with Dave and Elliot from Sipography, just for 24 hours. Sort of 12 of that was spent on the Grand Union Canal. And the area I picked was an area with a huge amount of boats, big boats, lots of people living on those boats. We were going into winter, the water temperatures were cooling down. I knew there would be carp congregating there for sort of sanctuary and shelter and additional food coming off the boats and stuff. But I never caught anything from those boats. I actually caught 10 carp in a night session from a lock mouth. There was no cover there. You probably, as an angler, wouldn't have put your rigs there. You would have gone for the boats, you know, where all the cover was. But by observing them and watching those fish, I quickly realised that they wanted to be in just slightly deeper water. And by slight, I just mean like a foot or a foot and a half deeper than the rest of the canal. So yeah, it's always important to let the carp tell you where they want to be, not you as an angler think, yeah, I'm going to fish there. That looks the really good spot. So what exactly are you looking for when you're going on your walk, when you're going exploring? You're looking for physical carp, of course. That's the number one thing, you know. Ideally, I'll be walking along and I'll see a carp or see a group of carp, black shapes, stuff like that. If I can't see them, maybe the water clarity isn't good, I'm looking for the signs that they might give off. For example, bubbles. Bubbles are great early morning, late into the sort of dusk and stuff. You'll often see fish fizzing and stuff. But be really careful you're not getting that confused with, for example, gases coming out of the bottom. Which, you know, lakes and even canals and stuff can do. I'm looking for, ideally, trails of bubbles, you know, where the bubble patches are coming up and then maybe stopping and then carrying on a little bit further and a little bit further. Or potential areas where it's just sheeting up, you know, there's a number of fish feeding there. So if you do see bubbles, it's a really good signal, really good sign, but just be careful it's not gases being released from the bottom substrates and stuff, and they are actually fish. Crashes, fantastic. There's nothing greater than turning up at a bit of water, having a good look around and one just throws itself out, or their head and shouldering and stuff. It's an obvious giveaway. They're not always doing it in the daytime. It's something to be conscious of. It might be worth, if you're fishing a water over a period of time, to maybe set your alarm through the night. Wake up at midnight, wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and just have a good look round in case they are showing themselves at night. And in winter especially, if you are lucky enough to see that magical head and shoulder, odds are on they're not going to be moving very far. So it's a really valuable piece of information in the colder months. If I do find them personally in this situation and I'm going to be fishing there and then, for me the number one tactic is just to sling some choddies over the top of them. I'm not going to start getting marker rods out and trying to ascertain what's the area like and stuff. With that sort of sliding chod rig, you can just bang it out in amongst those showing fish, potentially with a throwing stick, spread a few baits around it, and yeah, more often than not, it's a really good tactic when you do see them showing and stuff. Reeds and lilies twitching, potentially even bushes and stuff, but they're a giveaway, you know. If you're looking at a big set of rushes and the reeds are banging and stuff, I'd immediately be thinking, you know, there's fish down there and present. The same with the pads. There could be a big set of pads and the pads will start to knock and move and stuff as a fish is passing through. I'll often look at those twitches of the pads, knocking and stuff, and try and work out, is it small fish though? Is it rudd and roach maybe that are doing that? Because if it is, there's no point in me fishing there. You know, I'm looking for the signals from the carp, which more often than not are bigger bangs on the rushes and stuff, or whole pads, you know, moving as they're passing through. The displacement or the rocking of water, you know, you've really got to be looking carefully to see this, but it could just be a slight vortex or a swirl, meaning that there's fish down there. If the water's very shallow, there's no reason those fish aren't on the bottom and feeding and doing that. Potentially even a tail pattern as they're feeding, just gently rocking the top of the water. Again, it's a signal that there's fish in the area. Different coloured water too, certainly on sort of higher stocked venues or muddy venues. even if the water's chocolate brown, with a set of glasses, I can differentiate between whether there's been fish there feeding or there is still fish feeding, just by the different colour of brown in the water. Again, it's a massive giveaway that there's fish present. Potentially bird life. Often on bigger lakes and bigger venues, if there's a group of birds out in a particular bit of water, I would be paying particular attention to that area. There's potentially a hatch going on, the birds are feeding on it on the surface of the water, and underneath it maybe there's carp. Another way the birds can give away, the carp's present is just by spooking. You could have a coot, for example, quite happily swimming along the surface of the water, and all of a sudden it just, flies off squeaking and stuff. That may well be because underneath it there was carp that spooked it. The weather, don't forget the weather, guys. Use it to your advantage. If there's a big wind blowing onto a bank, I would probably spend more attention looking there. Or conversely, if that big wind's cold, it's coming from the north or the east maybe, and it's been blowing there a few days, I'd go onto the back of the wind, where the water's going to be more comfortable for those fish, and focus my attention there. Look for big changes in the weather, drop in pressure. Those sorts of things will really sort of trigger the fish into wanting to feed and that. So if you can time your exploration visits, going and looking at a body of water with a big change in weather, that'll often be when those fish really do give themselves away. What about if you can't find anything to go on? Because it happens, happens to me a number of times. I've gone to a venue, there's no signals, there's no bubbles, there's no twitching of reeds, there's no coloured water. In that situation, I'll actually use bait to my advantage. I'll knock up a mix, something that they can grab around on, some scopic squid flake, maybe some sweet corn, some pellet, and I'll go around and I'll bait a number of areas, and I'll hope that introduction of bait will draw the fish in and create some activity, and then I'll just keep monitoring those spots. I'll just be walking around, hoping that the bait has then either created some displacement of water, tail patterns, maybe there's bubbles coming up, maybe now the water's changed colour. So I actually used my bait to the advantage of being able to track those fish down. And potentially I'll jump in the water. A tactic I've used an awful lot. Stick a set of waders on, get in there, and without even putting any bait in, I'll just kick the bottom up, churn it over. I've done it in the past with a weed rake as well, rake a spot. That disturbance of the bottom, all that natural food coming up will often attract the carp. They'll come in for a good old look and stuff. If you then put a little bit of bait over the top of that, that'll keep them there feeding until hopefully you get back round from your walk and you go, yes, they're here, there's fish here now. So you can use bait to your advantage. What about the dark? I'm wondering if any of you are thinking, well, yeah, that's all good and well in the daytime, but what about when it's dark? Well, for me, there's no excuses. In fact, I'll go as far as saying, once it gets dark, sometimes I find it easier to find them. Basically, it all started off for me with the use of a big, powerful shooting lamp. I just rigged this up to a battery in a little pouch, and I'd wander around lakes and canals, literally lamping up the water. Fantastic tactic. In more recent years, the last 3 or 4 years, I've just been using super bright, powerful head torches. A lot of you are going to go, what head torch? In the past, I've used powerful LED lenses, and all I use is a really powerful Petzl. This one here is a sample, a prototype I've been testing now for well over a year. Basically, you just need something that's bright enough to really penetrate the water to allow you, with the naked eye, to be able to see either features and stuff or more importantly, carp. Do they spook off it? Yeah, sometimes they do, but more often than not, they don't. And I'd rather they spooked, albeit just sort of sulked back into the depths, than not know where they are, I'd rather walk around in the hours of darkness, find those fish, even if they sort of back off a little bit, at least I know what area of the lake or the venue they're in. I can then go back in nice and quietly and get some rigs into position. And talking of night, the other thing I'll mention is this here. It's a little night scope. It's quite basic, it's a few years old now. Nash got it me for Christmas many years ago. You can get some serious ones of these, like military grade and stuff. But yeah, this literally is night vision. I can flick it on in the night. It could be very, very dark, for example. There's no real sort of moonlight or stuff. And I can hear a show, flick this on, I can look out there and I can see where that show was. And I can also use it to locate other anglers' presence. I can turn up at night at a venue. I can flick this on, look around on the far bank, see what bivvy's got a brolly or a bivvy in, and it allows me to make my swim choice nice and quickly. So it's another useful bit of equipment. If venue permits, if it's allowed, getting out on a boat for me is the ultimate game changer though. I've talked about vantage points, you know, being above the water and being able to look down. There's nothing greater than being on the water itself and being able to sort of zigzag around or check areas out and again, look for fish or specific features down there. It's my favourite way of fishing for sure. People use echo sounders a lot. I do, but not very often. It's all a little bit too techie for me. But you know, the likes of Samir, for example, they rely so heavily on these, fishing these massive, big inland seas, to be able to find big sort of differentiations in depth or structures, big plateaus and stuff. They're really, you know, incredible now. They've got sort of side scanning technology and you can really pick up everything, not just the fish, but you can understand the substrates, the depths and stuff. So they are a real useful tool. For me, I'm a bit more old school and I still love nothing more than the prodding stick. This is really old now, this product. It was invented many years ago, really simple to use. It's got holes down the bottom, comes with 2 different points, either a domed point or a very pointy point. You can add a number of sections on depending on how deep it is. And this new version here, the top section's now broken into little sections, so you can really get it to the exact length of the water that you're trying to feature find in. And yeah, I'm out on my boat. I might have the echo sounder on to ascertain, you know, a big differentiation in depth or maybe a weed bed. But then it's this here, it's this here on the bottom, feeling around that I can really work out where the drop-offs are, where the softer silt is, maybe where the hard area is. And it really allows me to be accurate with regards to understanding what's down there on the bottom. Once I've found something of interest, I'll often drop a H block in and then I'll work the spot even more. Sometimes dropping 3 or even 4 H blocks in the area to completely map it out and to find exactly where I want to position my rig in that situation. It's for me the ultimate way of fishing. I'm never more confident going back to the bank when I've used that prodding stick, had a good feel around, dropped a couple of H blocks to map it all out, and I know when I go back out there and put my rig, I'm fishing almost at 100% efficiency. Another thing while I've been out in the boat, if the water clarity is good, you can use things like this. This is an aquascope or a glass bottom bucket. You can stick it in the water itself and then again be able to look right down into the depths to see what's down there. For me, I used to use them a long time ago, but they are a massive hindrance. They're big, they're bulky. If you're using a little boat, they get in the way, and they also involve the use of your hand. So if I'm using an engine or sculling with a single oar, I've got to hold on to this at the same time. It means when I want to lower a rig down or potentially also use the prodding stick, I just don't have enough hands. So in more recent years, I've just been using simply a face mask. I can whack this on. I've got both hands free now. Yes, I've got to stick my face in the water. When it's freezing cold in the winter, that's not that pleasant, but it does allow me to angle a whole lot better just by the fact that I'm now, you know, I've got both hands free. And then finally, one you've probably heard me mention before, the underwater camera. Again, a massive game changer for me. Going out, finding something potentially on the big echo sounder or with the use of the prodding stick, and then lowering this camera down on the bottom and actually looking exactly what's down there. Is there a bloodworm bed down there? Is there a mussel sort of bed down there? What is that substrate like? To the point that I could even potentially, with some very good boat work, which doesn't always work out when it's windy, even be able to see my rig laying down perfectly on the bottom. Yeah, massive edge for locating features and in fact carp. Swimming, it's quite a new thing for me. It was Mark Hoffman that first introduced me to it about 3 years ago. I've also witnessed Jocelyn doing it. Again, one could argue possibly a little bit extreme, but when you truly want to understand the environment that those carp are living in, if it's nice and warm, if the water's clear, I can't think of anything better than getting in the flippers, getting the snorkel on and diving down there and actually understanding their environment even further. Getting back to sort of normal fishing now, when you don't have access to a boat, you can't just go swimming in a nice clear gravel pit. From the bank, there's still things we can do. We can utilise a marker float, we can cast it out there, we can understand about underwater features, weed, silty areas, gravel bars, plateaus. These are all things that might attract the carp or keep a carp, you know, residing in a particular area. This is a little spot on marker float, 2 different colour options available depending on the light levels. A really unique design in that there is a swivel at the bottom here, but not an exposed one. what you tend to find with, swivels at the bottom of conventional marker floats, if there's any silkweed or weed, they can tend to sort of clog them up and stuff, and it makes it very difficult for the float to pop up. So this has got a little plastic protector that you can thread the braid through to basically stop any weed from clogging around your marker float, making it very, very easy to pop up to the surface. I might just use a bare lead or one of these type of leads to sort of drag back and see what kind of weed is there any food living in the weed and stuff. Or potentially, if you're tech savvy again, I know that a lot of the lads here use them, you could use a deeper. That's going to give you immediate information about how deep it is and stuff, what's the topography out there like, how up and down it is and stuff. So even if a boat isn't an option, there's still ways you can understand more about the lake or the environment you're fishing in from the bank. Once I've been round a venue, maybe multiple times across different weather conditions and stuff, I will have started to build up pieces of the jigsaw, bits of information, vital bits of information. And then me, again, I'm pretty old school, I will translate that into a map. For example, I would identify where the weedy areas are, where is the shallow water, the deep water, is there any particular features, Bankside, for example. And then I would start to mark it out with wraps or potentially utilising the baiting pole. I've actually done a map recently. I almost considered showing it to you guys, but I haven't fished the venue yet, and there are other people fishing it, so I'm just going to refrain a little bit longer. But basically, I've got a map of a venue I'm fishing. Drawn it all out, went on Google Earth, got exactly the scale of it, put some defining features on it, the swims, for example, there was an island, and then I've been round with a rod, casting, feeling, been out in the boat with the prodding stick, and yeah, I've basically in most of those swims dug a little area into the bank, which is where I know I need to kneel or stand, and I can ship out with the baiting pole. I know exactly how many sections it is to get to a spot, that's all recorded. And the same with the cast and the wraps, because if it's too windy and I can't use the pole, I'll have to cast it. And I know exactly the line it's on because I'm kneeling in the same position or standing in the same position every time, and I've got a far bank marker. Like I said, I'd love to show you this map because it's incredibly detailed and complex, but you can do the same, guys. Wherever you're fishing, you can go and build up all of these pieces of information, pieces of the jigsaw, and you can transfer them onto a map, that you can then go back to that venue. And it makes angling when you get there so much easier. You're going to be so much more efficient. Once you're actually fishing, this is probably something I'm very guilty of not being very good at. Once you're actually fishing now, you've gone on a session, you've got the rods out, it doesn't mean that sort of hunting them down in location and watercraft stops there. A good angler will constantly be looking at the water. He won't be on Netflix, he won't be drinking beers with his pal in the next swim. He will sit there constantly looking at that water, looking for signs and signals. I hold my hand up, I'm not very good at it. I'm good at finding fish, I'm good at looking for the signals, but I have to be on the move doing it. The moment I've got my rods out in a swim, I do struggle to look at that same sheet of water for hours and hours on end, but it's something I need to improve on personally because you just never know. You could miss a vital piece of information, a show, for example. If you don't see that because you're too busy watching your phone or whatever, you've missed out on something crucial. So there's how I go about looking for them, finding them, things I use in that situation and stuff. There is one danger, and that danger is once you've built up loads of knowledge, going into your session with a preconceived idea. And I'm going to quickly explain to you what I mean by that now. You and I, we could go for a walk today around a venue. Doesn't matter where it is, but we're going to go fishing together. We go for a walk around the venue, never been there before, know very little about it. Park the car, and we get into a swim. It's swim number 7. And in swim number 7, there's a gentleman, and he's playing a carp. So we stand well back, give him all the time in the world, and we just watch. Anyway, while he's playing it in, I clock and say to you, oh look, he's got one in the net as well, and there's a retainer floating there. And we're looking at each other going, wow, he's having it off. Like, this must be a really good swim. Anyway, the gentleman gets to fish him. It's a good 30-pounder, a real nice one. And he turns around to us and says, morning. We acknowledge him back again and we engage in conversation. Anyway, this particular gentleman who's fishing swim 7, he's really friendly, like proper sound. And he goes on to explain that he's actually had 15 fish this morning, a couple of 30s, reckon this one's probably a 30-pounder as well. And yeah, it's just fishing really well. He explains that just out there in line with that pylon on the opposite bank. At 14.5 wraps, he's found this lovely sort of depression, and he's just fishing solid bags in that. He goes to show us his rig, a little inline lead with a short hook link. He's got 2 little bits of plastic on there, and shows us how he's doing it, wrapping up. He basically runs us through how he's had such a successful session so far catching these 15 fish. While he's doing all that, he actually has another take. It's the last rod that he had out, you know, and that's a nice 20-pounder as well. And he'd give us about an hour of his time and really filled us in on what he's up to. We bid him farewell, and we turn around 180 on the spot, and we walk out of that swim. What happens when you and I walk out of that swim is we do this thing, and that is we start painting a picture in our head. So we turn to each other and we're like, oh my God, we're going to be down here next weekend. We're coming down here fishing. We've got to get into swim number 7. And you're going, yeah, we've got to get into swim number 7. We'll double up in here. Basically, over the course of the week, while you're waiting for that session to come round, you start painting a picture in your head. Yeah, you know, he had a big bivvy. Oh, we're going to have 2 umbrellas, so we'll set it up like this. And he was using a pod. We're going to have single sticks. And you start to imagine how that session's going to play out. As the days wore on, you're starting to get more and more excited, and you start to get your tackle prepared, you know. You start tying exactly the same rigs as the gentleman was using. You even, on the Thursday, start to prepare solid bags exactly as the gentleman was using. You go to the shop, you get all your food and your supplies, the motor's packed, you go to work on Friday, and you've just got one thing on your mind, and that is, it's a Friday, the lake's going to be busy, I need to get into swim number 7. So you go and see your boss first thing. Oh mate, I've worked really hard this week. Is there any chance I could have a half day? Your boss is in a good mood and says, you know what, no problem, you take a half day. Yes. That's now stacking the odds in your favour that when we get down there, swim 7's gonna be free. You race to the lake, like faster than you've ever driven before. You probably get a speeding ticket, but all that's on your mind is getting into swim 7. You arrive, you drive into the car park, you quickly get out of the motor and you look across to that bit of water where swim 7 is. Oh my God, there's no one in there, swim 7's free. You've never loaded the barrow so quickly, you know, and the pair of us race round there, we get into swim 7, we get the wrapping sticks out, we start wrapping up 16.5 wraps or whatever it was, exactly towards the pylon, out go the solid bags exactly like him, maybe a couple of spods over the top. And we wait, and we wait, and we wait, and a whole night passes, all day Saturday passes, Saturday night passes, and come Sunday morning we've got to get packed up and get back for our race dinner. We caught nothing, absolutely nothing. And that's because the carp aren't there no more, you know. We've gone into that session, I'm guilty of this, I still do this all the time. I've gone into this session with a preconceived idea because of some previous knowledge and information, but the long and short of it is the carp weren't there anymore. If upon arrival on that Friday afternoon at lunchtime, we had all the time in the world to maybe do 1 or 2 or 3 laps round, we could have looked hard enough, found those signals, found those signs, worked out where the carp were, and then make a judgment on where we were going to fish, make a judgment then on what rig we're going to use, what bait we're going to use, rather than relying on a preconceived idea. So even though I am stressing how effective it can be to create a map and build up all these pieces of the jigsaw, it's also really important to make sure that every time you go, I said it at the start, the decision you make on what swim you go in, you believe there's carp out in front of you. After doing it for 30 years, for me now, I would rather get to a lake or a venue, do a lap of it, not find anything and go home rather than chuck them out not knowing that there's anything in front of me. It's taken me a long time to get this point. I've been through so many years and so many sessions of just getting into a swim or going through the motions, but right here, right now, I'm at a point in my angling where I'd rather go back and see the family, do jobs around the house, come back into work and wait until another time I can get out on the bank where I can use my eyes and my knowledge to walk around and look for those fish, look for those signals. Last time, guys, last time. Next time you go fishing, make sure that the decision you make of the swim you go into, the area of water you fish, in your gut, in your belly, you believe there's fish in front of you. That's all for this episode. Next episode, we're going to get into bait because it's one thing finding them, but once you find them, it's all about trying to get them feeding, get the confidence going, because at the end of the day, the next thing they're going to do is pick up that hook bait, and that is really important to us. See you later, guys. Big ups. Thanks for tuning in.